Hi everyone, so we have finally completed all the logics and implementation for our game for the backend in our C++. So moving forward, we will implement the graphics in our coming tutorials. So we have the game over, we have this player rectangle moving, enemies rectangle falling down, bullet implementation, and everything else has been done, right? So now our aim is to, if I run this application, is to add graphics and make this game look like an actual game, right? So how I think to make this game is something like a retro rocket game, shooting the enemies. So for that, I want to replace our enemies with a PNG of our actual enemy, looking like a enemy kind of thing from this space. And for that, I have collected some of the elements. And so without further ado, let's just move forward and add images to our enemy. So if I go back here, if you notice something or not, I'm not sure if you did, you can see that some of the enemies, I just noticed that some of the enemies were falling from here, and if you shoot the bullet, see, it will only go as close as to this, and if one of the enemies is coming from this side, from the absolute right of the screen, then it would be as a bug that you will just pass through this and then there will be a game over and you're not able to hit it. So I also don't want that, so I will try to reduce the width by a bit. So we can do that actually later in the game. But let's go and add graphics to our enemies. And whenever this hits the ground, we'll have a game over. Yes. If I do restart, everything will start from the beginning, but we still have this window on the front. We'll fix this too. So before anything else, I want to change the graphics for our enemies in this episode. So for that, we have our enemy.kml here with the rectangle of the color blue. So instead of rectangle, I'll change this to item, as this is item. You can keep rectangle if you want, but as I don't want this to be a rectangle, I'll just call it an item. Item is also like an element to add different items. So inside this item, what I have is enemy1 with height this, with the position this, right, on x-axis, y-axis. So inside this, I want an image. I want image, and this image is going to be the image of our enemy that is going to replace this item or going to fill this item. So for that, I'm going to give this an ID. I'm going to say enemies, and I'll give anchors.fill, which means that I want to fill this image to this item. So parent, so any image or source that you add in this image will be filling this item here, and we'll be able to see the image inside our KML in the front end of the game, right? So I want to give source, and inside the source here, I need to put the path of our enemy PNG. So before that, we have a QRC inside Qt. If you don't know what QRC is a Qt resource compiler. It's a compile, if you add any resources inside QRC file, which is just like a XML file, so it is going to compile those resources and then embed it inside our source code. So you can, it's not like that you can add the path directly from the web or from the local browser, local device. You can, but it's always a good idea to use QRC. It's way faster, it's lighter as well, and it's good for compiling the resources. Some people use QML inside the QRC file. Now we have this QML outside, right? So even this QML file can be included in QRC, because QML is also a resource type, right? Any resources, any asset that needs compiling can be used inside QRC, and QRC will help you compile those files. So what I'm going to do to add QRC is just like you go to this project name with a hammer and then add new, just like how you edit classes, QML files. You'll go to Qt. Inside Qt you have Qt resource file. You'll choose that. If you add it directly into the project code, or sorry, project directory, a lot of resources will be just on the main project directory. I don't want that. I want to have a subfolder for our asset. Inside that subfolder, I want to keep all the assets. So I'll choose, and then inside untitled 3, I want to create a new folder, and I want to call this assets. And inside this assets folder, I want to keep all the resources. So done, and then I'll name it assets, and done. This will be included in our CMake. If you see, yes, if I saved it, now you can see this coming into our file tree. But as soon as I save our CMake file, you will see this assets here and then asset.qrc here. And sometimes you just have to go and manually add this in your CMake, but normally Qt Creator does it for you, and you can just hit save, and then it will bring it to your file tree, and you will be able to see it here. So if you double click on asset.qrc, nothing happens. But if you go and open with plain text editor, it's just a XML type like a file. So the best way to open and use this is to go here, double click it, and instead of open with plain text editor, just open with editor, and then you get this window on the screen, and you have prefix, add files, and you can see that add files is not enabled. You need to add prefix first. So prefix is just for grouping the resources. Let's say you have a navbar in your application, and inside navbar you have icons, and I will just make a prefix saying navbar and add those icons into the navbar prefix, and it will group it as a navbar, right? So similar to that, I'll just call it enemy. So our enemy prefix will have all the resources of our enemy as a group, right? As only purpose is to manage the grouping of our asset. So inside this, I'll add files, and I have already created the enemy here. Actually, I took it from FreePic. It's a website to download graphic resources online, and I have few images of our enemies. I have 5 of them. I'm going to include them from the add files. See, I've made some changes for our player rectangle, for bullet, and some other GIF animation for the blast and everything. So we are only changing the enemy for now, so I will include all the enemy images. I'll give this images a description in the link, or you can go to my GitHub, and inside this project directory you will find asset directory that we created just now, and inside the asset directory you will have all these files. So I'll open this, and it will ask you, do you want to copy these files inside your project directory? Yes, I want to copy this, because later on I might delete it from my downloads, or I might delete it from documents wherever I have it for now. But if I copy this to my project directory, then all of my resources will be inside the project directory, right? So even if I delete it somewhere else, my project will still be fine and running, because whatever needed for the project is just inside the project directory. So I'm going to copy it to our asset directory that we created. I'm just going to rename it to my enemy1, save, and then this will be enemy2, save, enemy3, save, copy enemy4, save, and then enemy5, save. So I have all these images here, but if you do not save this, then it will not appear here. So make sure that when you add these files, make sure to hit Ctrl.S to save it, and then you will be able to see it here on the project tree or the file tree. And if I run this, nothing happens, because we have not actually loaded it inside our enemy.kml file here inside the resources. Let me just add one of the PNG just click it on this PNG and right click. You have two options: copy path, which is the actual path of this image, and we have this copy URL, which is of taking from where? QRC. So copy this one, the URL, and then paste it here. So because our QRC is keeping track of all these resources and compiling and pushing it here, helps it compile the resources. So if I run this, our enemy is replaced with this. Now make sure you have something included in your CMake. I included it already, but you might see nothing. You might see a blank window with no enemies because Qt doesn't include this one line thing, this set CMake auto RCC on. You need to include this here in your CMake to be able to see any type of images that you include in the project of your Qt, or any type of videos or whatever resources it is. So you need to include this auto RCC. You have auto mock, but we don't have like auto RCC from the beginning, so you need to add this. And I will just include the description for the article that I wrote for CMake auto RCC, so I'll provide it in the link. But anyways, just include this one line code in your CMake and that's it. You're good to go. You'll see your enemy images coming. So we finally have a graphics of our enemies, but we have 5 enemies, right? I have like kept 5 variations of enemies, so I don't want a same dull enemies to come. So I want different enemies. I want to make it look cooler. But what you can also do later on in the game is you can have a different enemies, and then for enemy 1 you can have a logic that enemy 1 will be killed with 1 bullet, but enemy 4 will require 4 bullets to kill it. So 1 bullet hitting the enemy will not make it die or go away. It needs 4 bullets to kill it. So you can keep on updating the game, upgrading the game, and keep on making changes if you want later on, because this is just a simple mechanism for the game, right? This is not actual big large scale game. So you can learn those logics, keep on building this game, and you can include this in your resume anywhere else, and it will look cool. So if you go back to your enemy.kml, here we have item inside where we have been loading this image, but what I want was to load different images here. For that, I'm gonna make a variable just like in JavaScript, but here I'll say property, because this is going to be a type property, and this property will also have a type, name and value, just like in JavaScript. So this type will be var, and I will say EPNC, and value will be, I'll create an array. So this array will contain URL of our images here, and then I'll have 4 more. One, two, three, four, five, six. Sorry, I'll just remove this one. Perfect. Now I would add path to our enemy 2, enemy 3, copy the URL and paste it, enemy 4, and enemy 5. Now what we are doing is we are creating the array of our enemy path, and I want to load this randomly from this array into our source here, so that we can get a random enemies falling from the top. So for that, what I want to do is I will create another variable to keep the index. So property, so index will be of type int, so I would just say int and then say enemy index, and our index should be random, right? So we have this JavaScript function math.random, and I want randomly out of what? Out of this 5 elements, right? So choose randomly between 1 to 5. So for that, what I will say is EPNG. You can directly hardcode it as 5, but I'll just like take the length from this EPNG dot length. So this is a function to give the random values, right? So looks good. But see here, if you know JavaScript, even if you don't know it, math or random will give you random values between 0.00 to something like 0.4.99 or something like that. It will give you the floating point variable values. So I want to round it off to closest integer, and then that integer will be loaded as an index in our enemy source file, and then accordingly we'll pull these paths, making it look like the enemies are changing. So for that, to round it off, I'll just use math.floor function. So we will have a random floating point variable from here between 0 to 4 or 5. So, and then floor will just round it off to the integer. And then here in the source, instead of hard coding the source path, what I will say is, I will say EPNG. This is the variable of our, name of our array variable. And then the index for this will be random, which is e index. So our source will be randomly, it will get randomly chosen, right? It will randomly choose the path, and it will look like the enemies are different. The variation will be there between 1 to 5. So if I run our application again, you will able to see enemies. Oh, what? This looks cool, but this was not something that I wanted. Now you see that enemies are changing, and I wanted to have a different enemies, not like the same enemy will change into something else. This is also cool, I like it, but when I thought of doing something like this was not something that I thought of. So we can change this right now. Because the index is randomly changing, our enemy is also randomly changing in the middle of the game, like in a real time. Brought to different enemies, and the only reason for that is because our enemy is being created somewhere else, and we are changing the source here. But what actually happening is those sources, those enemies where they are created, will have these source. This is the only item, right? So item is not actually changing. If this one item changes, it will change for every enemy that has been created, right? This is a single item function, item element for all enemies. If this changes, then it will change for every other enemies. So only way out of this is having this implementation in our C++. Anyways, it's not that hard. It's plain simple. We have already seen it. We have already done it. So nothing to worry. So just copy this queue property and put it here. Instead of double y, I will just say let's say m index and read m index. Instead of double, I'll just say integer, because index is going to be integer only, right? So set index and index changed. Perfect. And I'll also event m index, and then we're gonna initialize this in our constructor. And let's have this getters and setters for this. So here I'll just include int m index is going to return what? I'll just say this is the current position, right? So I'll just do m index for this, and this our m index function will return the current position, current index. Perfect. And then I need a setter function void we have set index function, and which is going to take a value which is going to be the current index, to be honest. So you can just write value because we already used values as a variable, so it will be easier for you to understand. So we're gonna check just like we checked here. Just copy paste this, bring it here, and say if m index is not equal to value, our m index will change the value. You already know what this is doing, right? So, and if this change is tracked, we're gonna say this will be index changed. So similar to what we have, like, index changed because we have not initialized it as a signal, so we quickly add it on the signal, avoid index changed. This is okay, this is all right. So inside our constructor, if you go to enemy.h, enemy.cpp inside constructor, what I want is if you go to enemy.header file, we have this m index, right? So enemy.c++, say m index is equal to rand, and then it will be random between 5 enemies, as we had like 5 enemy pictures. So this will be randomly chosen right here, and then we will just use this inside our QML in enemy.kml. Instead of epng index, I'm just gonna say model. See, where is this model coming from? It's coming from the repeater, right? So model dot, this repeater is present where? In our main.kml here, controller enemies model, right? So don't get confused. If you're watching this series, then I'm hoping that you're not getting lost at what I'm doing in these tutorials, because I'm not trying to explain the older things, because it is only going to make this tutorial longer if I reteach you the same old things that I have already taught you. So please don't get confused. So model dot, I need to pass the index, right? To get the index, what was the function? Was it m index? Let me check in our enemy.h. Was it m index? All right, perfect. Looks fine for me. If I go to enemy.kml, m index, perfect. Let's go and run it. Int is a function or a function pointer. Okay. If I go to enemy.header file again, return m index, perfect. Int m index. Sorry for this. This was there, so I'll change this. So it's running well. Okay, fine. Now let's see. Do we have random? Yes, we do have random enemies coming. Perfect. this is what I wanted. So this is how you apply enemy graphics. So I'll see you in the next one. We will apply the player graphics. Looks good for me. Perfect. So